Rahim and his wife Mariam had always believed that peace was found in the small, ordinary things of life. Their little house on the edge of town was not fancy, but it was theirs. The walls carried their laughter, their shared struggles, and the quiet comfort of knowing that they had each other. Rahim worked long shifts at a workshop, while Mariam kept their home warm and welcoming. Life was simple, but in their eyes, it was enough. It was a late afternoon when the trouble began. The sun was lowering behind the rooftops, painting the street in shades of orange and gold. Rahim had just returned home, exhausted but happy to see Mariam waiting with tea on the small wooden table near the window. They had only started to relax when a sudden, sharp knock echoed through their door. Rahim frowned. It wasn't the gentle knock of a neighbor or the friendly tap of a friend. This one was loud, demanding, and impatient. Mariam looked at him curiously, and Rahim rose to open the door. Two men stood there, tall and stiff, both wearing dark jackets and holding clipboards. They didn't smile, nor did they offer a greeting. Instead, one of them cleared his throat and spoke in a commanding tone. "We're from the Homeowners Association," the man said firmly. "You've been ignoring notices about your yard. There are new rules, and you must follow them." Rahim was taken aback. He blinked at them, confused. "Homeowners Association? There is no such thing in this neighborhood. We don't have one." The second man narrowed his eyes. "Don't play games. You've been warned before. Either you fix the problems, or there will be consequences." Mariam stepped forward, her voice calm and gentle. "I think you are mistaken," she said softly. "We never received any letters or warnings. Please check your records again." Her politeness seemed to make no difference. The first man's face hardened, and his tone turned sharp. "Don't act clever. We know you've been ignoring the rules." Rahim's patience began to thin. He had lived in this street for years, and there had never been any association or rules. Something about the men felt wrong. Their badges looked cheap, their papers looked messy, and their eyes carried no warmth, only coldness. "Listen," Rahim said firmly, "we are not under any association. Please leave." But instead of leaving, the man stepped forward, trying to push his way inside. Rahim blocked him immediately, his heart pounding with anger. The second man muttered something under his breath, and in the chaos Mariam tried to move closer, hoping to calm the situation. It was then that disaster struck. As Rahim held the door, Mariam cried out suddenly. In the scuffle, she had stumbled and fallen against the wooden frame of the door. She clutched her arm, her face twisting in pain. Rahim's eyes widened in shock. "Mariam," he shouted, rushing to her side. The men glanced at her briefly, but there was no concern in their eyes. One of them sneered and muttered, "You'll regret this," before both stormed off down the street, leaving Rahim kneeling beside his wife. Her arm looked swollen already, and her breathing was uneven. Rahim felt his heart break at the sight of her pain. He quickly called for help, and within minutes he was driving her to the hospital. The drive felt endless, though in reality it took only 15 minutes. Mariam tried to stay strong, whispering to him that she would be fine, but Rahim could see the strain on her face. He kept his hand tightly on the wheel, fighting the storm of guilt and rage rising inside him. At the hospital, doctors confirmed what Rahim feared: Mariam's arm was broken. She would need time to heal, and though they promised she would recover, the sight of her lying in the hospital bed made Rahim's chest ache. Sitting beside her, Rahim replayed the incident again and again in his mind. Who were those men? Why did they come to his door pretending to be officers of some association that did not exist? Why did they hurt his wife and then vanish as if nothing had happened? Miriam, even in pain, tried to calm him. Don't worry, Rahim. It was an accident. Maybe they won't come back. But Rahim shook his head. He knew it was no accident. He had seen the way they looked at him, the way they pushed, the way they spoke. They had chosen his house for a reason, and he would not rest until he found out why. As Rahim sat there in the dim hospital room, the only sound being the beeping of the monitor and the soft breathing of his wife, his thoughts went to his cousins. They were not ordinary men. They were bikers, tough and loyal, bound by a code of family and brotherhood. Whenever someone tried to hurt one of their own, they rose together. Rahim had never been a man of violence. He believed in peace, in hard work, and in living quietly. But this was different. Someone had walked into his home, hurt his wife, and threatened his family. Now, he knew he had no choice. He would call his cousins. And when they came, they would come like a storm. Rahim sat silently by Miriam's hospital bed through the long night. The faint sound of machines and the soft footsteps of nurses in the corridor filled the silence, but his mind was far from calm. He held Miriam's hand gently, watching her sleep, her face pale and weary from the pain of her broken arm. Inside his heart, a storm was brewing. He wasn't a man who liked conflict, but this was different. His wife was hurt. Strangers had invaded their peace, and they had walked away without fear. Something about the way those men had spoken made it clear they would return or at least cause more trouble. By dawn, Rahim's decision was made. He could not fight this battle alone. He had family, and his family was strong. Rahim had cousins who rode in a biker group. To outsiders, they looked rough leather jackets, roaring engines, long rides that took them across states. But Rahim knew their truth. They were fiercely loyal, bound by family ties and unspoken promises. They didn't allow injustice to touch those they loved. So, as the morning light touched the hospital windows, Rahim stepped outside into the cool air and took out his phone. He scrolled through his contacts and stopped at a name, Farouk. Farouk was the eldest of the biker cousins. He had always been protective of Rahim, like an older brother. Rahim hesitated for a moment, then pressed call. The line rang only once. Rahim, came Farouk's deep voice. Rahim swallowed hard. Brother. I need you. There was no hesitation from Farouk. Tell me. Rahim explained everything: the knock at the door, the fake officers, Miriam's broken arm, the threats, the way they vanished. His voice shook at times, but his anger gave it strength. Farouk listened quietly, and when Rahim finished, there was a long pause. Then came the answer, calm but firm, you don't stand alone. We're coming. Rahim felt a weight lift from his chest, though he knew the storm that would follow would change everything. 2 days later, Miriam was discharged from the hospital with her arm in a cast. Rahim had prepared the house carefully, making sure she was comfortable. He kept her close, refusing to let her lift a single object. Rahim, Miriam said softly, sitting on the sofa with pillows around her. Don't trouble your cousins because of me. I don't want more fighting. I only want peace. Rahim knelt beside her and took her hand. This is not only about you, Miriam. It is about our home, our safety. If those men can come once, they can come again. I cannot allow that. She looked into his eyes, seeing the quiet fire in them, and she knew nothing she said would change his mind. So she only nodded, trusting him. That evening, the distant sound of motorcycles echoed down the street. Neighbors peeked out from behind curtains as 6 bikes rolled in together, their headlights cutting through the dusk. The engines roared like thunder, but when the riders stopped in front of Rahim's house, they moved with calm purpose. Farouk was the first to remove his helmet. His hair was streaked with gray, his face lined with years of experience, but his eyes were sharp and steady. Behind him were the younger cousins Adnan, Hamza, and 3 others, each strong and loyal, their expressions serious. Rahim stepped outside to greet them. He felt both relief and guilt. Relief that his family had come. Guilt that he was dragging them into his trouble. Farouk clasped his shoulder firmly. "Don't think like that, Rahim. Family stands together. Tell us everything again." Slowly, and with every detail. They gathered in Rahim's living room. Maryam, though weak, greeted them warmly. The cousins treated her with gentle respect, their tough appearances softening in her presence. Then Rahim began, telling them the story from the beginning. As he spoke, the cousins listened in silence, nodding, their jaws tightening. By the time Rahim finished, the room was heavy with determination. "These men are not from any real association," Farouk said finally. "They are imposters, probably part of a scheme. They look for easy targets, people they think will stay quiet. They chose the wrong family." Adnan leaned forward. "Do we know where they came from?" Rahim shook his head. "They disappeared down the street. I haven't seen them since." Hamza cracked his knuckles. "Then we find them. And when we do, they will learn what it means to hurt family." Maryam looked uneasy, but Rahim placed a calming hand on hers. He didn't want violence, but he knew his cousin's way. For them, justice meant action. Farouk raised his hand, silencing the room. "Listen. We won't act blindly. First, we investigate. We find out who these men are, where they live, and why they came here. Once we know, we decide the next step." The others nodded. Their loyalty was not about reckless fighting, it was about protecting their own. That night, Rahim felt something he had not felt since the incident: safety. His cousins were here, filling the house with their presence, their voices steady and reassuring. Even Maryam seemed calmer, though she still worried about what might come. As Rahim lay awake later, listening to the faint sound of his cousin's laughter from the other room, he whispered a silent promise to Maryam in his heart. "No one will hurt you again," he thought. "Not while I have family by my side." The storm had not yet come, but Rahim knew it was on the horizon. And this time, he would not face it alone. The next morning, Rahim woke early. The house was filled with a strange kind of comfort. His cousins were still asleep in the living room, sprawled across couches and rugs, their heavy boots lined neatly by the door. The silence was broken only by the ticking of the clock and Maryam's soft movements in the kitchen. She was making tea with her one good hand, insisting that she could manage despite Rahim's protests. When Farouk woke, he smiled at her determination. "You are strong," he said warmly. "But let Rahim help you. We need you well." Maryam laughed softly, though her arm in the cast reminded everyone of why they were there. "You bikers came here to protect us," she said. "So let me at least make tea for you." Soon, the cousins gathered around the small table. The steam from the cups rose into the morning air as they began to plan. Farouk spoke first. "We need to know who those men are. People like that don't just appear out of nowhere. They must live nearby or at least have a place they use. Hamza leaned forward, eager. We can start by asking around the neighborhood. Someone must have seen them. Rahim hesitated. Our neighbors are quiet. Most keep to themselves. I don't know if they will want to get involved. Farouk nodded calmly. Then we don't involve them too much. We just ask, listen, and watch. The group split into pairs and went in different directions. Rahim went with Farouk, while the younger cousins spread out to cover more ground. Maryam stayed at home, resting but also worrying. She prayed quietly that no more trouble would come to their door. Rahim and Farouk walked down the street, stopping by a small grocery shop at the corner. The shopkeeper, an old man named Khalid, knew everyone in the area. When Rahim asked carefully about strangers with clipboards and jackets, Khalid's brow furrowed. Yes, I saw 2 men like that last week, Khalid said thoughtfully. They were going door to door, asking people about repairs, fees, rules, strange things. I told them we have no such association here, but they only laughed and walked away. Rahim and Farouk exchanged a glance. That confirmed it, these men had been working the whole street. Do you know where they went after? Farouk asked. Khalid nodded. They walked toward the old warehouse road. I don't know if they stayed there, but I saw them heading that way. This small clue lit a fire in their hearts. They thanked Khalid and moved on, deciding to follow the trail later with the others. Meanwhile, Adnan and Hamza had their own luck. They spoke to a young delivery boy who often biked around the area. The boy scratched his head and said, Yes, I saw 2 men with clipboards. They got into a van, white, no plates on the back. They parked near the warehouse road sometimes. I think they hang out there. When everyone gathered back at Rahim's house in the afternoon, the pieces began to fit together. The warehouse road kept coming up. Farouk tapped the table with his finger. That's where we start. We don't go loud. We watch, we listen. If they are hiding there, we will know soon enough. That evening, as the sun dipped low, the cousins prepared. Dressed in their biker jackets, they rode together, their engines roaring once again through the neighborhood. People stared, some curious, some worried, but Rahim felt a sense of strength being among them. They parked near the end of the warehouse road, careful not to draw too much attention. The buildings there were old and half abandoned, some with broken windows, others covered in dust and graffiti. It was the kind of place where trouble could hide easily. Farouk led them quietly. We don't go all together. 2 of us will look around while the rest wait. Adnan and Hamza volunteered first. They slipped away, moving carefully along the shadows of the buildings. Rahim waited with the others, his heart pounding. He wasn't used to this kind of thing, but he trusted his cousins completely. After nearly half an hour, Adnan and Hamza returned, their faces serious. We saw the van, Adnan reported. White, no plates. Parked behind one of the warehouses. 2 men were there, smoking, laughing. Same jackets, same clipboards inside the van. Rahim's chest tightened at the thought of those faces. He could almost hear Maryam's cry of pain again. Farouk's eyes hardened. Good. Now we know where they are. Tomorrow, we find out more. We don't rush. We need to know how many there are, what they want, and who they answer to. The cousins nodded. They understood patience was part of strength. Rahim, however, struggled inside. Part of him wanted to storm that warehouse right then and there, to demand answers, to demand justice. But when he looked at Farouk, calm and steady, he forced himself to breathe. His cousins knew how to handle this better than he did. Back at the house, Miriam listened quietly as Rahim told her what they had found. She looked worried but tried not to show it. "Please, Rahim," she whispered. "Don't let this go too far. I don't want to lose you to anger." Rahim held her close. "I promise, Miriam. I won't let anger guide me. But I can't let fear guide me either. We must know the truth." That night, as Rahim lay awake again, the warehouse road haunted his thoughts. Somewhere out there, those men laughed as if nothing had happened, while Miriam slept with a broken arm. And deep inside, Rahim knew the search had only just begun. The next morning, Rahim woke with heavy thoughts still clouding his mind. The warehouse road had become more than just a location, it was a knot of unanswered questions. Who were those men? Why did they pretend to be officers? And why target him and Miriam? As he helped Miriam with breakfast, she tried to keep the mood light. "You'll burn the eggs again if you keep staring at the window," she teased softly. Rahim smiled weakly, though his mind was elsewhere. He couldn't shake the image of those two men laughing by the van. He wanted answers, but he also wanted to protect Miriam from more harm. By mid-morning, Farouk gathered the cousins in the living room. Their jackets hung on the chairs, and the table was covered with scribbled notes and a rough sketch of the warehouse road. Farouk's voice was calm but firm. "We need to confirm how many of them are out there. Yesterday we saw two. That doesn't mean they are the only ones. A place like that might hide more." Hamza nodded. "I say we check it again today. This time, we take turns watching. They won't even know we're there." Rahim listened quietly, but when Farouk asked his opinion, he spoke from the heart. "I want to know why they came to our door. If this is about money, or about scaring people, then it's not just us who are in danger. They could hurt anyone in the neighborhood." Farouk placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're right. And that's why we take this step by step. First, we learn. Then we act." That afternoon, the cousins rode back toward the warehouse road. They parked at a safe distance and split up. Adnan and Hamza circled from one side, while Farouk and Rahim approached from another. The other cousins stayed back, ready if needed. The warehouses loomed like silent giants, their broken windows reflecting the fading sunlight. Dust covered the ground, and weeds pushed through the cracks in the concrete. It was a place long forgotten by the town, which made it perfect for men who wanted to hide. From behind an old fence, Rahim and Farouk spotted the white van. Just as before, two men were leaning against it, smoking and talking loudly. But this time, Rahim noticed something else. Inside the warehouse behind them, shadows moved at least two more figures. Farouk whispered, "4 of them, maybe more." Rahim's jaw tightened. His instincts screamed to confront them, but Farouk's steady gaze reminded him to wait. They couldn't risk walking blindly into danger. Meanwhile, Adnan and Hamza returned with news. "We saw a small stack of boxes inside the warehouse," Adnan said. "Looked like paperwork, maybe equipment. They're running something there, not just hiding." The cousins exchanged looks. Whatever this was, it was more than just two men playing pretend. Farouk decided they would return after dark. "We'll keep distance tonight," he said. "We watch, we listen. No action yet." Rahim agreed, though his heart ached with impatience. That evening, Miriam tried to talk Rahim out of going again. "You've already seen enough," she pleaded. "What if they see you? What if something happens?" Rahim sat beside her, gently holding her hand. Miriam, I have to know. I can't sleep at night knowing they're so close, walking free. If they could hurt you once, what will stop them from trying again? I can't let that happen. Tears filled her eyes, but she nodded. She understood his resolve, even if it scared her. When the sun went down, the cousins returned to the warehouse road, their bikes parked quietly under the cover of trees. They moved with caution, keeping to the shadows. From a safe distance, Rahim watched through a crack in the fence. Inside the warehouse, the men were gathered around a table. Papers and maps were spread out. One man spoke loudly, his words carrying into the night. Tomorrow, we hit 3 more houses, the man said. Same story, new rules, new fines. People get scared when they see jackets and clipboards. They'll pay, or they'll be punished. Rahim's stomach twisted. Now he understood. These men weren't just pretending they were running a scheme, using fear to steal from innocent families. And Miriam's injury had been part of their reckless intimidation. He felt Farouk's hand on his shoulder again, grounding him. Now we know, Farouk whispered. This is bigger than just us. They're hurting the whole community. Rahim clenched his fists. Then we stop them. The cousins returned home that night with heavy silence between them. Miriam listened as Rahim explained what they had overheard. She covered her mouth in shock. So it's not only us. They want to trick others too. Rahim nodded. Yes. And we can't let them continue. Farouk gathered everyone once more. His eyes swept across the group. We have proof now. They are imposters, running a scam, using threats. This is not just revenge, it is about protecting families. Tomorrow, we plan our move. But we do it smart, not reckless. The cousins agreed, their faces set with determination. That night, Rahim finally slept for a few hours, though dreams of Miriam's cry still haunted him. Yet for the first time, he felt a direction. They weren't just reacting anymore. They had a purpose. The shadows on the warehouse road had been revealed. And soon, those shadows would face the light. The morning after their discovery, Rahim felt a new fire in his chest. The night before, he had heard with his own ears how those men were planning to trick and threaten more families. It was no longer only about Miriam's broken arm, it was about protecting everyone in the neighborhood. As the sun rose, Rahim brewed tea and sat quietly at the table, thinking. Soon, Farouk joined him, pulling out a chair with his usual calmness. You didn't sleep much, Farouk observed. Rahim shook his head. I kept hearing their words. They plan to hit more houses today. What if it's an old couple? Or someone who can't defend themselves? We can't wait too long. Farouk nodded slowly. True. But if we rush without a plan, we'll only make it worse. We must be smart. Justice is not about anger, it's about doing what's right. Rahim respected his cousin's wisdom. Still, his heart beat fast with urgency. By mid-morning, the cousins gathered again. The living room became a war room, papers, pens, and rough maps spread across the table. Miriam sat nearby, listening quietly, her face pale but determined. Though she was worried, she wanted to be part of the discussion. Adnan tapped the map with his finger. The warehouse road is the center of their activity. That van is their tool. If we stop that, we stop them from reaching houses. Hamza leaned back in his chair. We could confront them there, but what if they have more people inside? We only saw 4. There could be more we don't know about. Rahim finally spoke. His voice was steady, though his eyes carried fire. I don't want a fight for the sake of fighting. I want them exposed. If the whole neighborhood knows who they really are, they won't be able to trick anyone. Miriam nodded in agreement. Yes. If everyone knows the truth, they will lose their power. Farouk leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. Then we set a trap. We catch them in the act, but not with fists with proof. We need evidence strong enough that no family will ever believe their lies again. The cousins murmured in approval. It was a bold idea, but it made sense. That afternoon, Rahim borrowed a small camera from a friend at work. With Farouk's guidance, they decided that two of the cousins would secretly record the imposters as they threatened or demanded money. Once captured, they could share it with neighbors, shopkeepers, and anyone else who might be targeted. Adnan and Hamza volunteered to carry the camera. We're younger, Adnan said with a grin. We can move faster if things go wrong. Farouk's plan was simple but sharp. Adnan and Hamza would tail the men's van discreetly. The others would remain nearby, ready to ride in if help was needed. Rahim wanted to go too, but Farouk insisted he stay back for now. You've already been marked, Farouk explained. If they see you again, they'll be suspicious. Let us handle this part. Rahim reluctantly agreed. Deep down, he knew his cousins were right. Still, it was hard for him to sit aside while others carried the burden. By late afternoon, the imposters made their move. Just as they had planned, the white van pulled out of the warehouse road. Adnan and Hamza, on their bikes, followed at a distance. Their jackets blended into the evening traffic. The van stopped in front of a small house not far from Rahim's street. Two of the men got out, clipboards in hand, walking with false authority. Adnan parked his bike casually nearby, while Hamza adjusted the camera hidden in his jacket. From where they stood, they could hear enough. The imposters knocked hard, their voices sharp. You've broken the new housing rules, one of them declared. Pay the fine, or there will be trouble. The old man who opened the door looked frightened and confused. He stammered, insisting he knew nothing about rules or fees. The imposters only raised their voices, stepping closer as if to intimidate him. Adnan's jaw tightened, but Hamza whispered, "Stay calm. We need the proof." The camera caught every word, every gesture. The men were fully exposed for what they were: liars, bullies, and thieves. When the imposters finally left, muttering threats, Adnan and Hamza slipped away, their hearts racing. They rode quickly to meet the others at the agreed spot. When the cousins gathered again in Rahim's house, Hamza placed the camera on the table. Everyone leaned in as the video played. The imposters' voices were clear, their faces unmistakable, their threats undeniable. Miriam gasped softly, her hand over her mouth. This is enough. No one will believe them again if they see this. Rahim felt a strange mix of relief and anger. Relief that the truth was now captured. Anger that his wife's suffering had been caused by the same hands now caught on film. Farouk nodded with satisfaction. Good. Tomorrow, we share this with the neighborhood. We spread it far and wide. Their game will be over. The cousins agreed. But Rahim, staring at the frozen image of the imposters on the small screen, whispered to himself, it won't be over until they answer for what they did to Miriam. That night, Rahim and Miriam sat together on the balcony. The cool breeze carried with it the faint sound of distant motorcycles. Do you feel safer now? Miriam asked softly. Rahim sighed. Safer, yes. but peace will only return when they're gone for good. Mariam leaned against him, her cast resting gently in her lap. Whatever happens, promise me you'll come back to me safe. Rahim held her close, his voice steady. I promise. And deep down, he knew the real test was still ahead. The following morning, Rahim woke earlier than usual. The cousins were already busy, their voices low but firm as they prepared for the day ahead. Today was not about watching or waiting, it was about exposing the imposters to everyone in the neighborhood. Farouk had a plan. We don't confront them in secret anymore, he said, spreading the notes across the table. We show the proof in front of the people they are trying to scare. Once the truth is known, their power is gone. Adnan grinned. Then let's make sure everyone sees it. Hamza lifted the small camera. The video is clear. Their faces, their words, it's all there. Rahim's heart pounded as he looked at the camera. He thought of Mariam's pain, of the way she had cried when her arm broke. This video was not just evidence, it was their weapon of truth. By afternoon, the cousins spread the word quietly through neighbors and shopkeepers. Come to the square this evening, they said. There's something you must see. Curiosity grew. People who had heard rumors of strange men demanding money whispered to one another. Families who had been suspicious but too afraid to speak out now waited eagerly for answers. At sunset, the square near the small park filled with people. Rahim stood beside Farouk, his cousins forming a strong line at his side. Mariam sat nearby, supported by one of the women from the neighborhood. Though her arm was still in a cast, her spirit was strong. She wanted to witness the moment when truth came to light. Farouk raised his hand, and the square grew quiet. His deep voice carried across the crowd. Friends, neighbors, brothers, and sisters, we stand here because we are being lied to. Some of you have seen men in dark jackets and clipboards. They claim to be officers of a homeowners association. They knock on doors, demand money, and threaten families. But they are not officers. They are imposters. And we have proof. Gasps spread through the crowd. Whispers rose and fell, but then the video began to play on a small projector connected to Hamza's camera. The people watched in silence. On the screen, the imposters appeared loud, arrogant, and threatening the old man at his door. Their words were sharp and cruel, their demands clear. When the video ended, the square erupted with anger. They came to my door too, one woman shouted. I thought it was strange, but I didn't know what to do. They tricked me out of money, an older man confessed. I paid them because I was afraid. Murmurs turned to shouts. The community, once quiet and divided, now stood united. They finally saw the truth. Rahim stepped forward, his voice steady. These men hurt my wife. They broke into our peace and left her in pain. But this is not only about us. They wanted to hurt all of you. They wanted to take what was not theirs. We cannot allow it anymore. The crowd roared in agreement. For the first time since the imposters appeared, the neighborhood felt strong, not weak. But while the people were speaking, Rahim noticed something in the distance: headlights moving slowly down the road. The white van. The imposters had arrived. The crowd grew tense as the van rolled into view and stopped at the edge of the square. 4 men stepped out, their expressions turning from smug confidence to unease as they saw the large gathering. Farouk moved closer, his cousins by his side. Here they are, he said calmly. Let's see what they say now. The leader of the imposters tried to speak, raising his voice. Everyone go back home. We're here to enforce rules. But before he could finish, Hamza replayed the video on the projector again, right in front of them. The imposters' own faces and voices filled the square, exposing their lies for all to see. The crowd erupted with shouts. Some people threw words of anger, others demanded justice. The imposters froze, their power crumbling under the weight of the truth. Farouk stepped forward. "You are finished. Leave this place and never return, or face the law and the people together." For the first time, the imposters had no reply. Their jackets and clipboards, once symbols of false authority, now looked foolish. Surrounded by angry families and united neighbors, they backed away toward their van. Rahim's heart was racing, but he stood tall. He had feared these men, but now he saw them for what they were: cowards hiding behind lies. Maryam, watching from her seat, felt tears in her eyes. Not from pain this time, but from pride. Her husband, once quiet and peaceful, had stood against fear. And the family that came on roaring bikes had turned darkness into strength. As the imposters drove off, the neighborhood cheered. Children clapped, elders nodded in approval, and the fear that once lingered on every doorstep began to fade. Farouk placed a firm hand on Rahim's shoulder. "This is only the beginning. They might try again elsewhere. But here, their lies are broken. And you, brother, helped lead this." Rahim shook his head humbly. "It wasn't me alone. It was all of us. It was family, and it was truth." That night, the cousins stayed late, talking with neighbors, making sure everyone felt safe. Plans were made to form a community watch so that no imposters or anyone else could take advantage of them again. When Rahim finally returned home, Maryam leaned against him, smiling despite her cast. "You kept your promise," she whispered. "You brought back peace." Rahim kissed her forehead gently. "Peace is here for now. But if trouble comes again, I know I won't face it alone." The engines of his cousins' bikes roared once more that night, not as a sound of war, but as a promise of protection. And as Rahim watched the tail lights fade into the darkness, he knew the story was not just about revenge, it was about family, truth, and the strength of standing together. The morning after the showdown, Rahim woke to a quiet that felt almost foreign. The neighborhood, once tense and suspicious, was now calm. Birds chirped softly, and the sunlight reflected off the walls of the little houses, painting everything in gentle gold. Maryam was awake too, carefully moving around with her arm in a cast. She smiled when she saw Rahim watching her. "You look tired," she said softly. Rahim shook his head. "Not tired, just relieved. Yesterday, we faced something I never thought we would. And it's over now." Maryam's smile grew. "Thanks to your cousins. And to you." Rahim felt warmth in his chest. He had always been a quiet man, someone who believed in solving problems calmly. But he realized that sometimes, standing still was not enough. Sometimes, it took courage, family, and truth to turn fear into safety. The cousins were still at the house, discussing how to help the neighborhood recover. Farouk had a calm but serious voice as he spoke. "We've shown the imposters for what they are. But fear lingers. We must make sure everyone feels safe again." Adnan and Hamza shared the camera footage with other families, showing how the men had lied, threatened, and tricked people. With each replay, the crowd's confidence grew. People who had once been scared to speak now laughed and talked openly about their experiences. Rahim walked among the neighbors, shaking hands, listening to stories, and offering comfort. Each story reminded him why they had acted, why the search, the watch, and the planning had been so necessary. Even Maryam, despite her injury, visited each neighbor with Rahim, speaking softly to calm worries. Her gentle presence reminded everyone that courage was not only shown in strength but in kindness. By afternoon, the neighborhood had begun to feel alive again. Children played in the streets, neighbors spoke freely, and even the shopkeepers, who had been worried about fraud, smiled as they recounted the impostor's failure. Rahim watched it all and felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The fear that had been in their hearts was fading, replaced with trust and unity. Farouk, standing beside him, nodded quietly. You see, Rahim, courage doesn't mean fighting every battle. Sometimes it means standing for truth and protecting those who cannot protect themselves. That is what you did. Rahim smiled, humbled. I only followed you and my cousins. Without them, we would never have known the truth or had the courage to act. Farouk chuckled softly. Family works that way. We rise together, fall together, and face anything together. That is the real strength. Evening came, and Rahim and Maryam sat on their small balcony, watching the sun sink behind the rooftops. Maryam rested her arm carefully across her lap, and Rahim held her hand gently. Do you think they'll come back? Maryam asked softly, a hint of worry still in her voice. Rahim shook his head. No. They know the truth is out. The neighborhood knows. And if they try again, we will be ready. But I don't think they will dare. Maryam leaned her head against his shoulder. It feels good, to finally be free from fear. Rahim smiled, feeling the weight of the past days lift. Yes, it does. And it's because we faced it together. The cousins rode off later that evening, their engines quiet this time, not roaring with anger but carrying a promise. They had protected their family and community, and now they returned to their lives, knowing they had made a difference. Rahim stayed with Maryam, feeling a calm he hadn't felt in days. He realized that this experience had changed him, not made him hard, but more aware of the importance of courage, family, and truth. The neighborhood, once tense and fearful, was now stronger. People spoke openly, helped one another, and looked out for each other. The impostor's attempt to create fear had failed, and in its place, trust and unity had grown. Maryam looked up at him and smiled. Thank you, Rahim. For standing up, for being brave, for keeping us safe. Rahim held her close, feeling a warmth that came not from victory but from the safety and love surrounding them. We did it together, he said softly. All of us. As the stars appeared in the sky that night, Rahim realized that life would continue. Challenges might come again, but he and his family, along with the community, would face them together. The strength of family, courage, and truth had proven stronger than fear, and that knowledge gave him peace. The broken arm would heal, but the bond it had strengthened. The bond between Rahim, Maryam, and their family would last forever. And for the first time in days, Rahim slept knowing that home was safe, Maryam was safe, and together they had turned fear into hope.